Before I do my playthrough of Test Drive 2, I figured I should do a couple of Grand Prix Circuit, which was sort of the Formula One equivalent to Test Drive. I actually quite liked this game, but it was a disappointment at the time because it seemed that all the tracks are much too difficult to drive fast on. Of course, in reality, that's Formula One for you. Formula One cars are about cornering and about dealing with virtually impossible road courses. And obviously the tracks are the same. I mean, this is why they use the road courses partly, is because they're so impossible. Monaco and all of these. And in any case, there were many, many features of this that were much more advanced than Test Drive. The handling was the best of the three. And notice it even has a progress bar as far back as 1988 when they designed it. Very, very advanced for the time. Music was great too, for the time. You could do a practice run, a single race, or you could do a full championship with all the tracks that they had. I find it very interesting that they included Rio and Montreal in the selection. Only 8 tracks. So I'm going to do a practice run on Monza here. That was my favorite track because it was the one that you could actually drive fast on. And I'm going to drive the Ferrari. It's actually the slowest of the 3 that they offer you, but it's actually... For me, it was always the most competitive because it has the best handling. It can stay on the track. The other 2 were, maybe just to my perceptions, really terrible at handling, and they're supposed to be Formula One cars. You know, go figure. And that included the McLaren, which was the most successful Formula One car at the time. Ferrari was not the team that it would later become. So... my driving in this is horrendously slow compared with what it used to be. I used to be able to do this track very easily in a minute, and there were a few times when I did it in under a minute. But the best I've been able to do so far is about 104 in my practices for these playthroughs. And it wasn't this run. This run I did 105, which was my second best. In every Formula One racing simulator I've ever tried, when you do practice runs, they count your best time out of your laps. And the overall average is not counted. Basically trying for lap times, which I guess makes sense. And here I am still driving much, much, much faster than I did when I first was learning the game back in the 80s. So I guess maybe I shouldn't complain too excessively. Got a 210 there, if you see that. 210 miles an hour. Actually, this car, interestingly, can only sustain 209, because if you notice the temperature gauge in the lower right, that actually works. See how it's going up and down, how it's going down? If you go over 209 with the Ferrari, you blow the engine, actually. You have to be careful about that. Whenever you hit 209 or maybe 210, you have to lift off the throttle. I don't know if the real car was like that, but it actually overheats in Grand Prix Circuit. You basically blow your engine if you overheat too much. And that's the end of the race for you, if that's the case. It's one more thing to keep track of among all the other things. I note that Street Rod is the same way. Street Rod, you can blow your engine by going too fast also. It's not just about bad shifting. Interestingly, this Ferrari has only a 5-speed transmission, which even in 1988 would have been a little bit unusual for a Formula One car. Even in those days, I should say, they had already switched to 6 speeds for most of the cars. The third car that you can try, in addition to the Ferrari and the McLaren, is the Williams. And the Williams in 1988, I don't remember what model it was, but it actually had a Renault engine, and it was... I don't know how well they did that season. I haven't done any research for that, for this playthrough, but the team was not as well known in those days as they would later become under, later management, let's say, with Ayrton Senna and these people associated with them. McLaren were overwhelmingly the most successful team. Which always irritated me because they had Honda engines, and of course Honda didn't produce any interesting street cars at the time. So, I'm on my last lap. I'm almost across the finish line. They stop you automatically like in test drive. And the progress bar again is there. I'm actually going to do 2 playthroughs in the end because I want to demonstrate the single race feature as well, which is basically like the tournament feature. The tournament scenario, you just do all the tracks instead of just one. That's basically the difference. And you go by points. That's my best time so far, although when I do the single race it'll be faster. But to take a quick look at the menus before we move on, there's a single race in the middle, and the championship circuit over on the far right, and the difficulty level basically has to do with the damage model and with whether you're manual or automatic shift. And again, you have the tracks menu. When you do the single race, you have to say which track you want. And if you noticed earlier, you also choose your laps.